She was the one who was never supposed to be there. The search for Shannan Gilbert is what found them all. The 4 bodies along Ocean Parkway, the serial killer dumping ground that had been in plain sight for years. A 24-year-old woman vanishing from a gated community on Long Island triggered the biggest serial killer investigation in American history. And yet, Shannan herself was never officially part of it. She was ruled an accident. She was the loose thread that police wanted to tie off and forget. She still is. She called 911 from inside a stranger's house.
State police.
Yeah, there's somebody after me.
I'm sorry?
There's somebody after me.
Where are you?
She banged on doors, screaming for help. Multiple residents heard her. Not one of them let her in. And a neighbor who identified himself as a doctor called her mother 2 days later to say he'd treated her, then spent the rest of his life denying it. Her case has never been solved. No one has been charged. The official explanation is that she panicked and drowned. Here's why that doesn't hold up. Shannan Gilbert, 24, was from Jersey City, New Jersey. She worked as a Craigslist escort and had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, though she wasn't on medication. On the evening of April 30th, 2010, she finished an appointment in Manhattan, then took a call from her driver, Michael Pack. A new client, Joseph Brewer, a 47-year-old out-of-work financial advisor, living alone in the gated community of Oak Beach, Long Island, had requested a session. They drove about an hour east. Pack pulled into Oak Beach around 2 a.m. and waited in his SUV while Shannan went inside. At roughly 2:30 a.m., Brewer and Shannan briefly left together in his vehicle. He later pleaded the fifth when asked about that trip. They returned to the house. At 4:51 a.m., almost 3 hours after she arrived, something went wrong inside that house. Shannan called 911. The 911 call. The call ran for almost 23 minutes. Suffolk County Police sat on it for 12 years, fighting court orders to release it. When it finally came out in May 2022, it was immediately striking. Not because Shannan sounded deranged, but because she sounded afraid.
State police.
Yeah, there's somebody after me.
I'm sorry?
There's somebody after me.
Where are you?
There's somebody after me.
Within the first 90 seconds, she repeated 3 times, "Somebody's after me. There's somebody after me."
These people are plotting to kill me.
Where are you? What's your address? What's your address?
She told the dispatcher, "These people are trying to kill me." When asked for her address, she couldn't give one. On the recording, Brewer is heard saying, "There is nobody after you. Come on, stop it. Your driver is out there." Shannan, apparently hiding behind furniture, asked Pack directly, "Are you going to kill me?" Pack responded, "Are you crazy?" She then said to someone, "You were a part of this all along." The call was transferred to New York State Police, a routing error that delayed any local response. Around the 17-minute mark, Shannan began screaming. Then banging sounds, then running. The call cuts out at 22 minutes 42 seconds, with the dispatcher still saying, "Hello, hello, hello." You can find the full audio in the description. It was released in 2022, and it's worth listening to. Running through Oak Beach. Pack watched Shannan burst out of Brewer's front door and tumble down the stairs. She ran down the street. Pack followed in his SUV, lights off. At the home of Gus Coletti, a retired insurance investigator, Shannan banged on the door and said, "Help me, help me, help me," repeatedly, but wouldn't explain what was wrong. He brought her inside and called 911. She looked at him and bolted back out the door. He then saw Pac's SUV crawling through the neighborhood. He confronted Pac, who claimed they'd been at a party. When Coletti told him police were coming, Pac said, "Oh, you shouldn't have done that. She's going to be in a lot of trouble." Coletti spotted Shannan hiding under his boat. She ran again. She turned onto Anchor Way, moving deeper into the community, away from the exit gate. The last confirmed sighting was at the home of Barbara Brennan, who called 911 but did not open her door. On Brennan's 911 recording, Shannan's banging is audible. Brennan told the dispatcher, "Some woman is knocking on my door. She says she's in trouble. I'm not letting her in." Suffolk County Police didn't arrive until roughly 5:40 a.m. By then, Shannan was gone. Officers assumed Pac had driven her home. They didn't know about Shannan's own 911 call. It had been routed to state police and wasn't connected to the local response for over a month. Found 19 months later. On December 11th, 2010, 7 months after Shannan vanished, a search launched to find her instead turned up 4 bodies wrapped up in burlap along Ocean Parkway, less than a mile away. Melissa Barthélemy, Megan Waterman, Amberlynn Costello, Maureen Brainard Barnes. The Gilgo 4. By spring 2011, 10 sets of remains had been found along the same stretch of highway. But not Shannan's. She was finally found on December 13th, 2011, in a 27-acre marsh in Oak Beach, roughly a quarter-mile from the last place she was seen. Her belongings, jeans, shoes, purse, ID, phone, had been recovered a week earlier, about 30 yards from one particular house. More on that house in a moment. She panicked, got disoriented, and accidentally drowned. This is the official Suffolk County Police position. Shannan had untreated bipolar disorder. She became paranoid, possibly triggered by the unfamiliar environment or by whatever happened inside Brewer's house, and in her confusion ran into the marsh where she drowned or died of exposure. The problems start immediately. Toxicology found no drugs in her system. None. The drug-induced panic narrative that police floated for years was directly contradicted by her own body. She was coherent enough to stay on the phone for 23 minutes, to ask Pac a specific question, to hide under a boat, to run strategically. Some will say that's not someone who has completely lost touch with her surroundings. And the medical examiner's office never actually ruled drowning. The official cause and manner of death were both listed as undetermined. Police promoted the drowning theory publicly. Their own ME declined to confirm it. Rex Heuermann killed her. The proximity argument is seductive. Shannan was a Craigslist escort who vanished right next to a serial killer's dumping ground. The same investigative footprint that turned up the Gilgo 4 eventually led to Rex Heuermann. But on April 8, 2026, Heuermann pleaded guilty to murdering 8 women. Shannan Gilbert was not among them. She wasn't named. He wasn't charged with her murder. And the pattern is wrong. Every Gilgo victim was stripped, wrapped in burlap, and deposited from a vehicle along the highway. Shannan was found clothed, with her belongings nearby, in a marsh accessible only on foot. She was last seen alive and running. None of his other victims were. Heuermann killed those women. He didn't kill Shannan Gilbert. Joseph Brewer. She fled his house, but Brewer passed a polygraph, cooperated with police, and even accompanied Shannan's boyfriend to file the missing persons report. He was cleared. He pleaded the fifth about the 15-minute car trip, which is suspicious and unexplained, but the evidence against him as her killer was never there. Let's talk about Dr. Peter Hackett. Hackett was an Oak Beach resident, a doctor of osteopathy, former head of Suffolk County Emergency Medical Services, former police surgeon, and the community's unofficial first responder. He owned a police scanner. Neighbors signed affidavits that he dispensed prescription medications from his home. On May 3, 2010, 2 days after Shannan disappeared, Hackett called Shannan's mother, Mary Gilbert, from his wife's cell phone. Here's what makes this significant. Mary didn't even know Shannan was missing yet. Shannan's friends hadn't reported her gone. Hackett called first. He identified himself as a doctor and told Mary he ran a home for wayward girls, a halfway house of sorts. He said Shannan had come to him on the morning of May 1st, that he had treated and medicated her because she was distressed. He asked if she was home safe. When Shannan's family came to Oak Beach on May 9th, Hackett denied everything. Denied ever calling, denied knowing Shannan, denied running any kind of facility. Confronted on camera by Mary, he said, "I never saw her. I never met her." Then CBS 48 Hours obtained the phone records. He had called exactly when Mary said. Confronted with proof, he said, "Yeah, I'm sure I did." He claimed he couldn't remember. In letters to CBS in 2011, he changed his story again, now claiming he got Mary's number from neighbors who were already searching and called to be supportive. He denied ever claiming to have treated Shannan. But here's where it goes further. Court records from the Gilbert family's civil lawsuit against Hackett contain neighbor affidavits. One neighbor reported overhearing Hackett outside his home, described as flailing against the siding of the house, wailing to his wife that he couldn't believe the situation he had put the family in, and that his intention was to help SG, not to kill her. Another neighbor claimed Hackett told him directly that he had sedated Shannan, and Shannan's belongings, her jeans, her phone, her purse, her ID, were found approximately 30 yards behind Hackett's house. The Gilbert family sued him for wrongful death. A court declined to dismiss the case on summary judgment, finding there were triable issues of fact. Hackett sold his Oak Beach home in 2012 and moved to Florida. He has never been charged with anything. Now layer in what the autopsy actually found. The Suffolk County ME ruled cause of death undetermined. The independent autopsy commissioned by the family, conducted by Dr. Michael Barden, former chief medical examiner of New York City, who had investigated over 3,000 homicides, found that the larynx was entirely missing and the hyoid bone showed damage with roughness at the margins where the bones had separated. Barden wrote, "There is no evidence whatsoever that Shannan Gilbert died a natural death, died from a drug overdose, or died from drowning. His findings were, in his words, consistent with homicidal strangulation." Police Commissioner Timothy Sini dismissed this as a page-and-a-half letter. He didn't dispute Barden's specific findings. He just dismissed them. One more layer. Chief James Burke, who took command in January 2012 and effectively ran the investigation for years, was later convicted of beating a handcuffed prisoner and organizing a cover-up. He had blocked the FBI from the case for the better part of a decade, forcing out detectives, barring outside agencies, and, according to multiple sources, letting a witness statement about a distinctive Chevrolet Avalanche gather dust for over 12 years. That statement ultimately identified Hewerman. Former state senator Phil Boyle said, "If Burke had not kicked the FBI out of the investigation, I think it would have been solved on day one. The same institutional rot that delayed the Gilgo case also buried the investigation into how Shannan died." So here's what the evidence actually supports. Shannan fled Brewer's house in genuine terror. The 911 call makes that clear. She ran through a gated community in the dark, couldn't find the exit, and knocked on door after door. No one let her in. At some point, she ended up at or near Hackett's property. As we've seen, Hackett had a documented pattern of inserting himself into emergencies and administering medication outside any clinical setting. The most evidence-consistent reconstruction is this. Shannan, in acute distress, ended up at Hackett's door. He attempted to sedate her, consistent with what he told Mary on that phone call and with what the neighbor overheard him say afterward. Something went wrong. She died, whether from the sedation itself, from an adverse reaction, or from something else that happened in that house. Her body ended up in the marsh behind his property. He panicked, called her mother to gauge what was known, then spent years constructing and reconstructing his denial. This theory takes the fewest assumptions. It doesn't require an unknown killer. It doesn't require drugs Shannan never took. It doesn't require her to have drowned in circumstances that the medical examiner declined to confirm. It requires only what the evidence already shows. A man who told Mary Gilbert he had treated her daughter, whose neighbors heard him say he hadn't meant to kill her, whose house sat 30 yards from where her belongings were found, and who has never had to answer for any of it. Shannan's mother, Mary Gilbert, spent 6 years fighting for answers. She filed lawsuits, confronted Hackett on camera, organized with other victims' families, and was relentless. Her advocacy is part of what eventually forced the Gilgo investigation to move forward. In 2016, Mary was killed by her own daughter, Sarah, who had severe untreated schizophrenia. She died without knowing what happened to Shannan. She was 52. Shannan Gilbert deserved better than the case she got. And if you think there's a piece of this story that still doesn't add up, what do you guys think actually happened to her? Drop it in the comments. Shannan's disappearance set off a chain reaction that exposed 10 victims along Ocean Parkway, which ended up being one of the biggest true crime stories of the last 2 decades. Is there another case out there where a missing person investigation actually cracked something much bigger? Let us know in the comments.